Class 7, Science Chapter 12, Reproduction in Plants. Animated Science. Introduction. Reproduction in Plants. All living organisms produce new individuals of their own kind. This ability of living organisms to produce new living beings of their own kind is called reproduction. There are a number of modes of reproduction, but each of them can be classified as sexual and asexual. A plant has root, stem, leaves, and flowers. The root, stem, leaves are the vegetative parts of a plant. Flowers are the reproductive parts of a plant. A flower may have either the male part or the female part or both male and female parts. There are two modes of reproduction in plants, that is, sexual reproduction. In this mode, new plants are obtained from seeds. Asexual reproduction. In this mode, the plants give rise to new plants without seeds. Let's learn about these two modes of reproduction in plants. Asexual reproduction in plants. In asexual reproduction, new plants are obtained without seeds. The new parts are obtained from spores, or specially formed cells, or the vegetative parts of the plant, such as root, stems, and leaves. Types of sexual reproduction are vegetative propagation, budding, fragmentation, spore formation in plants. Vegetative propagation. It is a type of asexual reproduction in which new plants are produced from roots, stems, leaves, and buds. Since reproduction is through the vegetative parts of the plant, it is known as vegetative propagation. Vegetative propagation through stem. In this, new plants are formed from the stem. New plants can be formed through stem cutting of plants. Example, rose and champa. New plants are also formed from the stem that have buds on them. These buds are also called eyes. If a few pieces of such a stem with eyes is buried in the soil and watered regularly, a new plant develops. Example, potato, ginger, turmeric. New plants can also be formed from horizontal stems of certain plants. The stems of these plants grow horizontally, parallel to the ground, almost touching it. Thus, new roots sprout from the nodes of these plants. New shoots also grow upward, forming new plants. Example, grass or oxalis. Vegetative propagation through leaves. In some plants, the buds grow along the margin of a mature leaf, and they also bear roots. When such a leaf falls on the moist soil, each bud can give rise to a new plant. Example, bryophyllum or sprout leaf plant. Vegetative propagation through roots. In this, new plants are formed from the roots. Example, sweet potato, dahlia, asparagus. These roots can be set aside for multiplication in the next season. Vegetative reproduction through detachment of parts of a plant. In this, part of a plant gets detached from the main plant body and fall on the soil to produce new plants. Example, cactus. Advantages of vegetative propagation. Plants produced by vegetative propagation take less time to grow. Plants bear flowers and fruits earlier than those produced from seeds. The new plants are exact copies of the parent plant, as they are produced from a single parent. Vegetative propagated plants need less care in early ages in comparison to nursery-raised plants. Budding. Budding is common in yeast. Yeast is a unicellular fungus plant. The nucleus of the yeast cell first gives out a small bud. The bud gradually grows and gets detached from the parent cell and forms a new yeast cell. The new yeast cell grows, matures, and produces more yeast cells. Sometimes, instead of one bud, a chain of buds arises from the yeast cell. Fragmentation. Fragmentation is common in some algae like Spirogyra. The long ribbon-like body just breaks up into two or more fragments. These fragments grow into new individuals. This process continues and covers a large area in a very short time. Spore formation. Some bacteria, fungi, ferns, mosses reproduce by forming small bodies called spores. Spores are tiny spherical, unicellular bodies protected by a thick, hard protective coat which helps the spore withstand high temperature and low humidity. Under favorable conditions, the spores germinate into a new plant. Sexual reproduction. Most plants reproduce sexually. In sexual reproduction, new plants are formed from seeds. Flowers are the reproductive parts of the plant. Flowers bear the reproductive organs of a plant. The stamens are the male reproductive part of a flower. They contain the anther and a filament. The anther contains pollen grains which produce male gametes. The pistil is the female part of the flower. It consists of the ovary, style, and stigma. The ovary contains one or more ovules which produce the female gamete or the egg. In sexual reproduction, a male and female gamete fuses to form a zygote. The flowers that contain either only the pistil or only the stamens are called unisexual flowers. The flowers that contain both stamens and pistil are called bisexual flowers. Types of sexual reproduction are pollination, fertilization. Pollination, the transfer of pollens from the anther to the stigma, is called pollination. Pollination takes place with the help of external agents such as wind, water, and insects. These are called the agents of pollination. For seeds to be formed, pollen grains produced in the anthers must be transferred from the anther of the stigma of the same or another flower of the same or another plant of the same type. Pollination is of two types. Self-pollination, pollination taking place within a single flower or between two flowers present on the same parent plant is called self-pollination. This means that the pollen lands on the stigma of any flower of the same parent plant. Cross-pollination, pollination taking place between two flowers present on two separate plants of the same kind is called cross-pollination. This means that the pollen lands on the stigma of another flower or a different plant of the same kind. Fertilization. The fusion of the male gamete and the female gamete is called fertilization. The cell which results after the fusion of the gametes is called a zygote. The zygote develops into an embryo. Fruit and seed formation. After fertilization, the ovary grows into a fruit and other parts of the flower fall off. The fruit is the ripened ovary. The ovules grow into seeds. The seed contains an embryo enclosed in a protective seed coat. Some fruits are fleshy and juicy, such as mango, apple, and orange. Some fruits are hard, like almonds and walnuts. Functions of fruit. It protects the seeds. It is the storehouse of food. It helps in the dispersal of seeds. Functions of seed. It bears the embryo or the baby plant. It helps in multiplication. And it stores food for baby plant. Seed dispersal. Dispersal of fruits and seeds is necessary to distribute them to a large area. If all the seeds fall at one place and germinate, they will not have sufficient water, sunlight, air, and space. Plants benefit by seed dispersal. It prevents competition between the plant and its own seedings for sunlight, water, and minerals. It also enables the plant to invade new habitats for wider distribution. Seeds and fruits of plants are carried away by wind, water, and animals. Dispersal by wind. It is common in fruits bearing hairy or wing-like structures. Example, calotrophes, dodenia. Dispersal by water. The fruit of some plants drops into the sea water and sea waves carry them away. Example, coconut and mangrove. Dispersal by animals. Some fruits have hooks and spines which get attached to the fur of grazing animals. Example, xanthium and martinia. Some plants bear sticky fruits which get attached to the fur of grazing animals. Example, dispersal by insects. Some insects like bees and butterflies carry pollen from the anther to the stigma. Winged seeds such as those of drumstick and maple, and the light seeds of grasses or hairy seeds of ark or mother, and hairy fruit of sunflower get blown off by the wind to faraway places. Some seeds are dispersed by water. These fruits or seeds usually develop floating ability in the form of spongy or fibrous outer coat, as in coconut. Some seeds are dispersed by animals, especially spiny seeds with hooks, which get attached to the bodies of animals and are carried to distant places. Examples are xanthium and urena. Some seeds are dispersed when the fruits burst with sudden jerks. These seeds are scattered far from the parent plant. Example, castor and balsam.